Set. All right, like to call the Wellington Capital Improvement Program Committee, CIP, to order on Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. It's 6:33 PM. The first item on the agenda is approval of minutes.
I don't believe we have any to approve.
Oh, okay.
Right, next time we got the 27th, I sent them to you, Stuart. They won't be filed till the morning by the time I got them to the town clerk.
Okay,
And then Catherine will have the ones from the 23rd to us.
But you haven't approved the ones from,
third,
Oh, the 13th
the
Yeah.
13th, I believe.
or the 20th. Is it the 20th?
the 20th, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I think we approved the 13th last week. And the,
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 20th as presented.
okay. Got a motion in a second. Anybody?
I'll second.
All right. Anybody had any corrections to make on those minutes? Going once, going twice, okay. All in favor to approve the minutes of January 20th, say aye,
Aye.
or put a thumbs up. Thumbs up. Opposed? Abstain? Alrighty, so we'll do that and we'll catch up on some more minutes next time. Present to speak, anybody present to speak that is not on the agenda tonight, wants to say anything? Seeing none? Alrighty. Discussion of year one. I know you just got the spreadsheet 2 minutes ago. Self-included. So I guess review of year one. I did get an email from the Conservation Commission who let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. They noticed in the CIP minutes of January 13th, this is from Pete Anderson. They incorrectly stated that the town had been awarded a DEP grant for $62,500. What we said was that if the purchase price of the property was $125, and that if we were awarded the typical grant amount of 50%, we hope to receive the $62,500. Which is, I think, what my understanding was. It just, I didn't catch in the minutes that it had been awarded. We want to make sure that this misstatement does not imply that all we are asking for is 38.5, which is the net price if they, to the town, if they do get the grant. It is important for the grant purposes that the town demonstrates support for the entire purchase price, for which a portion will be covered by the grant if awarded. Again, the purchase will be predicated on having received the grant. This is, I think, somewhat more of a procedural thing, and
Does it change what we have? If you look at that spreadsheet Donna gave us on line 118. No, sorry. Is that
well,
spelled
118
out? Does that accurately reflect what she's saying? What Peter's saying in there?
kind of. So the 62.5 in line 120, row or column AA, that's not a
No. That's a-
that's not a guarantee. They
Right.
haven't applied for it yet. Based on what everybody knows, we think we're going to get it. So the I'm trying to look at the other figures there. So the question is, do you, when you do the budget, do you put in the 38.5 as our net? With this, the hope that we will get the 62.5 from the state, which would go back into probably general reserve. And the other question for the committee members, if they don't get the grant, are we willing to pay an extra 62,500 out of the budget? It's probably the bigger question. And might be a Board of Finance thing, Mike, if you want to chime in on how you put some in, take some out. You know, ideally you hope it's in the same fiscal year, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Have we accounted for that properly in this spreadsheet?
So that's a good question. I thought in previous discussions, I felt like I'd worked this all out in my head and it made sense in previous discussions, but now some doubt is in my mind now. I guess that maybe that's something for more discussion after we're done with approving minutes. Or did we actually finish the minutes? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm trying to follow my notes and pay attention to what you're saying and I'm failing.
So what I think was the purchase price was 125. There's some surveying and appraisal costs in there that are going on right now, I believe, in this fiscal year. So we might not even have to show those.
Can I?
And is
I
this,
apologize.
in terms of voting on you know, for 38.5, would you want to buy it? And if it was 62,500 more than 38.5, probably around 101,000 if I had to guess.
Right.
Is that an okay price to get this
That's the
thing?
question. If the grant hasn't come about yet, so they're hoping that it will be there, they're hoping there will be a grant. If that doesn't ever happen and this continues through the process and we approve it, are we then saying we're willing to pay the whole cost with no reimbursement?
Right, and that messes up our budget for the year
Right.
of adding another 62,000 of expenses in there. However, I don't believe they can apply for the grant until the town, at least on paper, commits the money that they're willing to go ahead with this process before they can apply for the grant.
It's kind of
Right.
a catch-22.
It is.
Yeah, as far as an official act of the Board of Finance, I think the way we left it with them was that they would continue to move through the process and keep us apprised. And that when they came to milestones or decision points, they were coming back to us.
And I think they're trying to get that in this fiscal year to
Well,
some degree, weren't
They
they?
would need money for the survey. Those are
Yeah,
those
which they have in their fund.
are yes, right. That was what they felt they needed to be ready for in this fiscal year, current fiscal year.
Okay.
Can I ask, so the superintendent is on the line, but he can only be with us till 7 o'clock. If we had any questions about the Board of Ed items while he's on with us.
Or I'd be curious if he has any comments on what we left in and took out.
Well, right, so I know the minutes, although Stuart, you've seen them and they haven't been filed, you know, talked, and I shared some of those things and asked him some of the questions, right? We talked about the fire panels. And I think, Mike, you may have asked if that had effect on the project, the town-wide project, and it does not. So there are two separate items, excuse me.
Right, yeah, I understood that. I think what I was asking was the dialer project. It was missing, I think what I commented on, it was missing Willington Hill Firehouse, and so we thought that,
Yeah.
you know, one way or another, that should be addressed as we move all these sort of quasi-public buildings over.
And then the other questions we had for him was if we were to, if he would, I think Steph's comment was, would he prioritize the fire panels over window replacements in year one?
Yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yes, they would definitely prioritize the fire panels over the windows.
Okay. Um,
And
So
then,
I believe as of right now, the fire panels are still in year one.
All right.
Line 65 for one of them and line 35 for the other.
And my hope is that I can help the school work out realize some cost savings. I think it's appropriate to budget where they budgeted it, but I have a feeling we can improve upon that number. So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
and then the other item we moved out of year one was the gym floor replacement.
Refinish.
Gym floor replacement is the,
Yeah, I don't believe it's a replacement. They're just refurbing what's there.
I'm reading the,
Correct. That's basically stripping the floor all the way down to the bones for resurfacing. We've had complaints for a couple of years now that floor has been slippery, and so just from a safety perspective, we realize that you like to see items on for a couple of years and not have surprises, but this was one that when we reached out to Bolton, who had a similar problem. They actually do this on an annual basis now, and they haven't had the problem. I'm not proposing they do this on an annual basis, but at least it would be a chance to get that floor done to see if it changes the conditions of how slippery it is.
bless you.
Thank you.
Are you folks aware that the school district's going to get a second round of COVID funding? It's going to be about $270,000.
Yes. Are you connecting that to a CIP project?
Yeah, well, I was just wondering, can we use it for a CIP project?
So I will tell you that it is very specific. We got the grant language on Friday. We haven't been able to apply yet because it just came out. But there's specific categories that we would have to use that money for. I will tell you that at this point, the Board of Ed last night at their budget meeting agreed to reduce their budget by $100,000 to pay for the utility staff, which are the folks that are doing the cleaning, the coverage, the everything under the sun, which allows us to stay open. And then there's other items that, it's for like cleaning supplies. I'm not sure there's any CIP projects that would fall under that money, that funding that the board has in. It has to be COVID related.
And was that designated for the schools only or townwide?
Schools.
Schools only. Yeah, it was based upon our Title I funds, which is on basically your free and reduced numbers. And they did it off of 2020. And we ended up, we were just told this is your number, and it's $268,000. So it's quite a bit of money. And the board is using, based upon discussions last night, they're already going to offset some of their budget for next year for items that are they're purely COVID related, such as the utility staff. Their wish is that there's some sort of catch up for students. If they're falling behind, funds are supposed to be there for that type of item too.
What would it look like, done in your spreadsheet, if we were to take out, we were discussing the fire panels versus the window replacement. We took out that CES window replacement and then put in the gym floor if it was a safety issue.
I think the board would support that too, Erica.
So,
Sometimes it's hard to prioritize those.
If we moved out, sorry, I'm looking at the line item, 37 and 38. And then moved back in line 73.
Or can you do one less classroom and still get the gym floor for window replacement? We'd like to get them all done ideally, but if we took the 87,150 and subtracted 11,000 from that, that would still leave you about $75,000 to do windows. And we'd still stay at the same dollar amount for the year.
You could also break that window project into two if you wanted to, because it's that upper wing, and you could do the front side of the building 1 year and the back side of the building in the second year. You may pay a little bit more money for it. I don't know that, but it would have to go out to bid anyways. So
Possible a little bit more money in labor.
yeah, and it would also be two applications to the state.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to just split it across 2 years?
Yeah, I think that's what Phil was saying, do one half.
I mean,
half.
split the funding, not the project itself. So basically get the contractor, have the contractor sort of across the July work happen, and then we pay for part of it in like FY22 and part of it in FY23.
Yeah.
Honestly, Mike, I don't know that answer just because it's tied to the grant. I would have to ask that specific question to the grant folks.
Okay, just was a thought.
Because I think we
Yeah.
have to appropriate all of the dollars for it, so that may be a little bit trickier. Donna, you can share your screen if it would be more helpful for folks to see the spreadsheet.
And even, I think that, what percentage reimbursement was that? About
65.36.
for the labor?
Yes.
I mean, even if you applied for year one for the 75,000, and then year two, you got 15 grand or so you got to come up with it to finish it off. And you could still time it towards the end of the school year. And you'd only have one application to the state. You lose a small percentage on one classroom full of windows.
I mean, the other caveat I'm going to throw into this wrench is that you have that in year one right now, right?
Yes.
The roofs are happening this summer, which means that's another contractor at the same spot in the same summer. Is the expectation. So to move it into year two is not. I think the gym floor is a much more reasonable item to flip flop. Would I like to see them both? Yes, but in reality, I don't know that those contractors aren't going to be in their way. I would assume not, but there's potential for that.
Alrighty. So I believe the window replacement was step one for that upper wing, and then you had some other, well, probably the AC is several years out. The exhaust fans, were that just in the upper wing or the whole school?
The heating project?
Line 51. CES exhaust fans, parentheses 12. Was that spread throughout the school or just in the upper wing?
Yeah, I think that's spread throughout the school.
Okay. So how about this? We move the gym floor back into year one, and we move the center school windows out to year two.
That's fine by me.
Anybody want to make a motion to that effect? Or at least
Oh,
the input?
we weren't typically doing
Right, I
motions
think we
on
were.
all of these, right?
I will move if we have to.
The general discussion, usually we don't. If it comes down to, a particular thing, I'd just like to move this along. We can sit here all night and chat about windows and fans and AC and stuff like that, but
Did we already move last week to approve year one as we had it?
No,
No, this is
Okay.
kind of what we're doing.
we're just
No,
finished. kind
I
of-
didn't, yeah, I didn't think so. So I guess my feeling is we just carry on by consensus for now and then we
Yep.
approve once we're ready.
I'd just like to see how that changes our bottom line.
Well, it makes it better.
Well, yeah. Well, it's off
It's
budget,
about
so it's not changing.
70-some $1,000 back in.
The other
Why do
question
we
I know
have-
you, oh, sorry.
Why do we have the CS fire panel on here twice? At 1.1 and 1.22, that's. row
One is Hall
35.
School, one is Center School.
Oh, okay, all right, sorry about that.
That's okay. Good question.
So Donna, if you want to try moving lines 37 and 38 from year one to year two.
Yes. Are you seeing my spreadsheet?
We are not seeing your screen. It
Okay.
doesn't look like you're sharing the screen yet.
Eric, I know the other question that you asked too, while Donna does that, it was around the 100,000 that was tied to the building committee. That $100,000, I don't think they make you do that whole amount. Because if you were gonna do a building, you would do it off of you wouldn't be expected, like the roof project, you had to put forward the full $1 million. You wouldn't be expected to do that, but you would be expected to have your bond in place. So I'm not sure the answer on that $100,000, whether you need to put that full amount in or not. But I could definitely find out for your next meeting, just call DIS.
Thank you.
But it's a reimbursement, so my feeling is that, you would want that full amount, but you would only get reimbursed on, so if you had a 55% reimbursement and you put 50,000, only 50,000, you would get the reimbursement back on that 50,000. You get 55% of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which is, I think, how we booked it in there. We left 100,000 and minus the 55.36%. And whoever you hire will probably want to see that money committed there as well, instead of piecemeal.
Right. I guess the question is, you might have to spend the 100,000, otherwise and then get reimbursed for it. You're not going to get the money until you spend it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, understood.
Be part of that bond.
That's part of I think the capital reserve or one of those funds that,
Yep.
the 100 goes out and the reimbursement comes back into it at some point.
Sorry, I had to run. I have to play dad tonight for a little while. Any other questions I can answer real quick?
No, I think that's been a help, and hopefully we'll move on from there. So we'll put the Hall School year one, Windows will go to year two. If that works for you, we'll do that.
It does. And you had the radios in year one too, Stu?
Yes.
Yeah. The board hasn't even approved that yet, but I have it on my agenda for Tuesday night, and I know that they're going to have that as a much higher priority than Windows. So I think that's a fair exchange.
Now the 16408, are those all portable radios?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I
You felt
believe
those
that's what
worked
was
well enough for you?
Yeah, they did. They worked very well.
All right. Okay, so Donnie, you got what's you moved over yet?
Yes. Yes, the windows are moved over to year two,
Yep. And then
coded to the reserve fund. Yep,
and
the gym
and then the Hall
floor,
School gym floor goes back to year one.
yep.
Okay. So that should lower where we are, that we could put more back into the reserve for now. Unless it-
So it actually increased it by 11,000 because the windows were in reserve and the floor I just put to local funds. But you can start moving some things out of local and into the reserve.
Yeah,
What-
and that's
can
where we
you
gotta
tell me,
watch. the
Donna, what
reserve.
that brings the local to? Oh, yeah, that's a lot. What's our, did we determine what we were aiming for?
No, but last year it was 544,000. 544,800.
So the reserve should be in better shape now that we moved the windows out in year one, right?
Okay, so you are correct. Yep, you're correct. Yep, that decreases the reserve spending. To 122,486.
So the net gain on the big spreadsheet is, we actually spent 11,000 more out of local funds, but we could probably reduce what we're putting into the reserve by 11,000. Because indirectly, we just saved 70 or so thousand out of the reserve.
Okay, how's that? We're back to 693, 335.
And what's our magic number we were shooting for?
Know that we've set where we want to be. Donna said last year we were at 544.
Yeah, that was sort of a philosophical conversation last year too, right before we got upended by COVID. The trying to figure out what's the right balance of investing in our infrastructure and our needed improvements, balancing that with taxation. Certainly there was appetite last year for increasing what we were putting in. We just never completed that conversation.
And I think we're gonna have to put a little bit more in because we can't keep neglecting some of these projects.
Right, and if you look at the push outs, as we've pushed things out of year one to make year one more palatable, we're just pushing up the rest of the year is a lot higher, assuming obviously that some of those projects may not stay in, but regardless, I think the concept is that if you keep pushing things out, you're gonna pay for them sooner or later.
Yep, and that's the nature of the out years of things do pile up in there, especially around years 4 and 5. If you think that far ahead, that that's where put some of this stuff.
So did we just put the 11,000 in local funds? Donna, is that where?
Yes, we put the floor resurfacing in local,
30.
and then I decreased the amount that we're going to transfer to the reserve by 11,000 so that we don't change our local spending in total. So I increased one and decreased the other.
Mhm.
So it's no effect.
Yeah, it's still 693.
So 693. So the question is, are we comfortable with 693 or do we need to get work to bring that down? And if so, to what is our goal?
I'll tell you, as far as at first blush, I don't think we should cut anymore, only looking at the amount of projects we have. And I'm not sure that I'm settled that we've got the exact right thing for year one, but I feel like we cut a lot. And I suppose that could set a bad precedent itself, because people will say, well, we'll just put in 100 requests and hoping we'll get 2. So I don't want that to be the only philosophy, but I do feel like the projects we're carrying have merit.
Right, and I think it's important for, this committee and then the Board of Selectmen, when defending this proposal, is that several of these items should have been done in this current fiscal year, would have been done if not for a
COVID.
pandemic.
Right.
And then other projects were slated for this year. So, we're seeing the result of that. And how do we get ourselves a little bit out of that hole?
Now, what if we move the capital reserve amount that we're sending over from 150 to, say, 100?
Okay, so Stuart, now we're at 139 because we took 11,000 off of the 150. So I'm going to take 39 off to bring it.
Okay,
Okay.
it's just a place to start.
So 654.
And for you Board of Finance folks, is that, and Donna, of course, does that leave a sufficient running balance in the general reserve? I suspect you have some rough figures of where you want to keep that. Because it looks like you started off with 466, 663.
Yep.
The
And
general reserve.
yep. And we're
And then-
estimating 274 at the
Yep.
end of this year.
And okay, so you're sucking a lot of that down this year then in this year's expenses. Huh? Okay, I see it now. Yep.
Yep.
But we lowered the expenditures, didn't we, for,
For 21, 22, we did lower the expenditures.
yep,
So that puts us 100,000 roughly over where we were last year. And if I
Yep.
look at the items that were cut from last year, that's about we're at 92,953 with those lease payments and the other projects. So although it's a significant increase, it's really increasing by what we cut last year to try to break us even. Attempt.
It's a 20% increase.
but I think Mike's right in terms of we reviewed the projects and I just hate to, hey, let's cut out another, 40,000 here and try to get that magic number, since we managed to not pull out as much from the reserve as we expected because of the windows moving out a year. And lowering the amount going into capital reserve sum. That's where you got to look at that. I believe the table 2 sources, for those that are following along in their own spreadsheet. They look at the what that running balance is. So if you notice in the out years, we're not pulling much of anything out of general reserve, but that's why it's a reserve. And inevitably it does get hit for something. So the bottom line is if you want to leave the projects in place, the only thing you can do is put less money back into the reserve. Anybody have any comments on that, or you want to leave it as is?
Stuart, I'm with you. I think we should leave it, at least for the moment, as is. It's not like this is the finished product anyway. And try to start working out into the later years and seeing, we may have to go back and forth a little more.
Yep,
I
okay.
feel like it's a pretty
So-
strong starting point.
Yep, I mean, we can cut that number some by putting less in the reserve. But otherwise, you gotta start cutting projects. And the project lists that are being funded are not all that long. Or numerous anyways. So you want to with the year two?
Before you go to year 2, did you want me to remove the grant reimbursement for the Talmadge property?
I do not know. I was never on CIP when you had to do one of these open space thingies.
It's a very technical term for it.
Yeah, the thing is, yeah, you can fix that in a minute. The end result is to say, if everything goes right, those numbers are correct. It's if the negotiated price is higher, it's worse. If it's lower, it's, better. And if we get the state grant or not.
Right.
And that I assume would have to go to town meeting anyways, right? Or of some sort.
Yes.
That the taxpayers would have to vote on, spending the full amount with the expected reimbursements of what they hope to get. I don't know if that commits the town legally to buy the thing. Or not. Maybe you can look back at when they bought the other property on Mason Road and see how that was done procedurally.
So
My thought is leave it there for now, knowing there's still some unknowns with it. We don't know what the purchase price is going to be. Not till they get the appraisal done and the survey and the negotiation. And we think we're going to get the reimbursement, but we don't know. And that's ultimately up to the selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the town meeting to approve that or not.
So if I'm correct, and we were to approve year 1 as it is and move this forward, we're committing, to tax dollars for $161,000. I mean, that's what we would be adding, correct?
Yes. 60,000 would come from the open space fund. 101,000 would come from the reserve fund.
So the open space fund has already been spent in previous years, so to speak, or committed to that fund. So it isn't like you've spent another 60 you already had. And they weren't sure that the amount of surveying and appraisal would come up to the 60 anyways that's going to be spent, I believe, this fiscal year. It's whatever's left in the open space fund will be added to whatever funds are needed from the taxpayer to make the purchase. So if they spent, 30,000 for appraisal and surveying, they'd have 30 grand left to throw into the pot from the existing fund. So that's why I think that fund source 15, I believe that's the open space fund, right, Don?
Yes.
So that's why that's marked as fund 15 for the 60 grand that's going into this. Which will be less, but we won't see their expenses in the CIP plan either. So I think my thought is leave it as is for now. As with any other land negotiations, it's not done till it's done. You know, if it comes back significantly more expensive, everybody's got to decide if they still want to do it or not. So that's based on what we know now. That's what we know now. Anything else, Erica, on year one?
No, I don't.
Mike, you okay to move to year two? Alrighty. Let's start at year two. If you look towards the top, you'll see the existing committed expenses, the bond for the library, the, looks like the last payment on the 2015 fire truck. Looks like the backhoe and mower. Donna, is there an expense in 22, 23 for the backhoe and mower, or is
No.
No.
21,
drops off.
22 the last payment?
Yep. 21, 22 is the last payment.
Okay, that's good. Always good when we come to the end of a lease. Got the animal control officer's vehicle for 4,400. We're paying on the one of the fire, the public works trucks and the chipper, at least for years 2 and 3. The air packs for Wellington 1 have year payments in years 2 and 3. These are all things we've committed to already and signed the lease. So short of giving it back to the leasing company, we're stuck with them. Roadside mower has at least 4 years left, maybe more.
Is that,
Yeah.
it says 2017 next to that on line 15.
Yep. It's 2027.
I like 17 better,
Me too.
but I knew it wasn't right.
But I know that's when we bought it. Oh, no, we got an 18, 19. Ignore.
And then the next 3 are the 3 public works trucks that right now are in the planning. Year 1 are going, continuing year 2 for payments. Wellington Hills service truck is currently in year 2, coming out of Fund 17. And the ambulance payment is coming up in year 2. For next, and then we still have the excavator there. Excavator that,
My question about the excavator is it's on the project list for 66,000, but only up here at 42,800.
that's the 5-year expenses, I believe. There's a couple years off the plan
Okay,
that
just checking.
Yep.
you still be paying
Got
for
it.
that.
Thank you.
I never quite heard in, you know, a concrete answer in terms of if they spent the 66,000 for the excavator, can they save 66,000 in outside contractors for doing the same work by doing their labor? I'm sure it's handy for a whole lot of other projects, but the example being the Village Hill Road the lower end for drainage, which I think the last price I saw was 257 or something like that.
But no one's reworked that price in years. So
That price is old, yeah.
very old.
Right, so there's a couple of steps that, hey, maybe the price went down. Um,
Yeah, just like 2017 for the loan too.
Yeah, so one is, to work out this whole project again, or at least see what the benefits of trying to do some or all of that in-house. One, you need an updated price from a contractor or bid estimate or something, that if you hired somebody, how much is that project? And the other is if we did it in-house, digging the trenches, laying the pipes down and that sort of thing, and hire what we have to for the paving. What would the end price of that be? And if the savings is there, then it makes sense to get the excavator.
That's just in one project, right? So we think
That's
about all
just in
the
one
other-
project, and in theory, over time, depending on how long the excavator lasts, it would, continue to pay for itself. I mean, I wouldn't demand 100% reimbursement, but right now, we're not seeing any figures to say that it saves any money. I said, all the parts are $30,000 for the pipes. Well, it's a long way from 30,000 to, 257.
Right, but that's not just, you're not just buying that excavator to do Village Hill. So there's multiple uses with that. So it's not.
Right, but
You're
right
saying
now,
if we
there's.
can't save it in Village Hill, Stuart, then it's not worth it. Is that what you're saying? If
Well,
we can't
no, but
save
that
everything in
it
one
would be the
project?
same guidelines for doing any other project. Is it cheaper to pay a contractor to come and do it all at once, or do you save money doing it yourself if you had the appropriate tools? If you're not saving money yourself, it didn't make any sense to do it. You might as well contract it out, get it all done all at once instead of dragging it out for a few years. But we haven't seen any figures saying,
Well, you can't, nobody's gonna bid on it, Stuart, because you're not gonna send it out to a bid because nobody knows you're gonna have the proper funds to do the job. So, I mean, you can't just have somebody come out and bid the job and be like, oh, hey, we just want a rough estimate because we want to save money on an excavator. Nobody's
well,
gonna,
we have a town engineer who generally does all the estimating based on his knowledge of the construction industry, of, what it would be, of what it, and there's factors that change every year, I'm sure, of labor costs and pavement costs and so on and so on.
well, if you gave the price of 230,000 30 years ago, I'm sure it's probably way more than that right now. So that,
Yeah, I don't think it was 30 years ago.
well, even 10 years ago, prices go up. So that's,
So Erica, there's a question for you in this. Basically, we spend a lot of time in this group doing sort of a pop version of cost analysis. And this is what we're trying to do in this conversation right now, which is probably really important, especially for a purchase that is not sort of in an established program. In other words, we haven't had an excavator to prove out the value of that in the past. So it becomes a really good question about, does it make sense? If it makes sense, it could be a real savings. So my question to you is, it's probably too much to ask Troy, but do we have someone within, the town or whatever that's available to help actually do a little more formal of a cost analysis to basically essentially get an estimate of the cost of a job and crisscross it with the availability of the staff from Public Works so that we can figure out how many hours they're available to operate the machine and all these costs of the job. Troy has tried to be very helpful in estimating what he thinks this will save and what it would cost him to do the jobs.
Well, I think what you heard Stuart say, is really spending dollars with a town engineer to get him to do that. That's really.
Right. So I think that's an important step, but fairness to Troy, he's got to figure out where all his staff go. So you got to combine the availability. Like if we figure out if staff is available for 6 months of the year to work with this machine, it might turn out that it's really, really valuable and it makes a lot of sense. But the last conversation we had with Troy last year was that he estimated having about 2 months, which is what he rented the excavator for this year, roughly 2 months, that he had his crew available because earlier in the year they're mowing, and on and on and on. So this, if we could do a little bit more cost analysis, we not only would learn better the value of the excavator, but it might actually benefit Troy figuring out his staffing.
I'd like to add
Troy
something.
will
here.
love this.
It's-
Maybe Troy can figure out, hey, if I put one more staff on and get an excavator, I can save the taxpayers a lot of money. In which case then, you know, we're really cooking with fire.
I'd like to just put out something that I've learned over the years, and that is analysis paralysis. You can study things to death, and I'm one to be cost effective, but at some point you need to decide, is this something we want or is it not? Okay, and if we want it, what's the best way to get there? And from my perspective, this is something you want, bid it out and let's do it. Otherwise, we're just going to go back and forth year in and year out and year in and year out, and you're never going to get a perfect answer. There's always going to be these unknowns. There it is. So, or me, I just say bid it out, do it, and don't worry about buying equipment or who's available, who's not. It's just a matter of, do we need to do this?
Yeah, I mean, with a part of a bid of not doing it yourself, you know what the costs are.
That's right.
And you're done with it. However, you know,
You're done
if
with
in
the
the long
cost.
run, this saves money on multiple projects, you know, the 11,000 a year might be well worth it. And we're all gonna choke at those prices between Village Hill and Schofield with still no way year after year of being able to pay for it.
Do we have
If
any,
we get it done with the
the lighting
ahead.
project that was just done, right? Do we know what it would have cost if we had had someone come in and do that, Troy?
That don't have any.
You didn't, because I know it wasn't your project.
Yeah, it wasn't part of the project, and yeah. Remember that machine, it's not, you know, and I think, I don't know if I can say this in the right way, is that if the machine is there, we can, the availability, we could use it around any time. So if we're gonna use it Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday we have to go mow, or if I have a guy out on Tuesday, well, we can continue on Wednesday. It's there at my ability to use at any point in time. So it's not just say, hey, we can save money here, we can do this. If a catch basin collapses on tomorrow, we can take that machine and use it. Or if there needs to be logs that need to be moved on the side of the road, we could use it. Or we need to dig a waterway. It's there at any time that we need it. Is it a cost savings on every single project? Who knows? Probably not. But we're not doing anything here by fixing any of the roads or doing anything because there's not enough money to bid out that job or to do it. I'll go get a bid on it. I'll call Carl tomorrow and get a price. He might say it's going to cost you $400,000 or $500,000 to have a contractor. Are we going to fix the road? No, we're going to push it out again. Where we can start, we had the machine, we can start fixing something. We're doing something instead of doing nothing, instead of kicking the can down the road. That's what we do every time. It's no big deal. If we don't want to fix it, then we won't fix it. But we're going around and around. I own one myself. It sits in my yard. If I need to use it on the weekends to go do something, I do it. Other than that, it sits there. But it's there when I need it to do something. That's just like everything else. Do you use the car every day sometimes? No, but you have it when you need it.
Troy, I definitely agree with you, and I hear your frustration. I completely understand that. As we kick these cans down the road, these road projects get more and more expensive. And I definitely understand your frustration with that. It's just a matter of trying to find the dollars, you know? I mean, a $66,000 chunk of money to buy a machine is a lot less than the cost of the road job. But then when you add it all back in, you know, then you're going to say, well, you got to get the budget for the materials and all that other stuff. It's just really hard to figure out what is the best way on a huge expense like this.
It is, but I think, Mike, to Troy's point is, for all these years, we've done nothing on this project and spent no dollars on it and just pushed it down the road. And at
Right.
some point, we either are going to do the whole project and bid the entire thing out and just bite the bullet and do it, or we're going to find a solution to spend fewer dollars over a shorter period of time to be able to do some of the work now. Right. So we've done nothing for multiple years, and we need to decide as a town, you know, as a committee, what we support and what we want to do. We've done nothing, and it's not just us. And I say the collective we, because we've only been sitting as a committee together for a short period of time. For years and years, other committees have pushed these big road projects down. And if we think we can do some of the work ourselves, don't we owe it to our taxpayers to start to chip away at some of this work that needs to be done?
I get your point, but the answer to your last question is no. We don't owe it to our taxpayers to start getting the work done. We owe it to our taxpayers to figure out the more cost-effective way to get the work done. However, I agree that we need to get the work done, and kicking it down the road is not helping us, which is why I'm interested in this conversation, because I want to find the right way to get us moving on it.
Right.
We-
And I say kicking the can down the road is not cost effective. If we find out now the project is doubled or tripled in price, we've really, we've hurt ourselves. And again,
I
and
agree.
I'm not, singling out any one of us or just this group.
Right. I agree with you completely. I'm just trying to figure out if it's more cost effective to contract it or to buy our equipment. It may be more cost effective to buy our equipment, but we only can answer that with a little bit better assessment of the numbers.
So I'll propose leaving that 11,350 in there. Actually, no, that's the wrong number. 10,700. Let's leave that in there for now. I think what it would take is, what is the price to do Village Hill by a contractor? And what is the price to do it locally? Understanding that you need paving crew to come in and whatever else you couldn't do in-house. That'd be what would, sell that project so quick of, hey, we can, one, get the project done, and two, we could save some money. That buys you an excavator. If you can come up with those two numbers.
Right. And I would add too, I think Troy's offer that he made a minute ago is very valid. I think he should talk to Carl and he should get an updated estimate. I think that's exactly what we're looking for, is we're looking for some numbers. And we talked about this last year, and this is exactly what we said last year. We said, if you can rent the excavator for a while during the year, see if you can come up with an idea of how it works and see if you can come back with some numbers for us. So that's what we're looking for now, is some numbers.
Okay, I'm gonna push back again. How do you know the numbers are right? You never know.
That's better than not having numbers.
No, I disagree. I think sometimes you're better off without numbers.
Then
Because
how
if
do
you
we
have
make a
numbers, you can
decision?
make the wrong decision.
So how do we make a decision?
You decide. The one sure thing will happen is if you get a contractor to do this. Okay, you got and that's the sure way to go. Will it cost more? Will it cost less? I don't know, but my guess is that you're not going to have that much of a savings, considering all the stuff that you're going to have to do, because you're paying the contractors, taking all that into account. You're paying for them to provide the service, but that service would also cost you, right? So anyway, I've said enough.
No, Orlando, I hear what you're saying, but some of what we've done is recognized that without potentially a bond, we wouldn't be able to do these projects in 1 year at the cost that they sit at. And that's why they've perpetually been pushed out into year 5, and where they kind of stay there. They move up in the plan. When we start planning, they go out to year 5, because in one large chunk, we have never been able to afford it. Or it's been determined by the folks at the table that it wasn't something we could afford, and we kind of perpetually move it out. And so at some point we decide, are we going to eat that large expense? And that would be either increasing our costs, increasing our CIP budget, or an increase to taxes, or less projects.
And yes, one option is to cut out a whole lot of projects and get based on that dollar amount that is kind of set for us of, roughly where we need to be. You got to cut out, $257,000 other projects to get Village Hill Road done. And is that a priority? And that's why it keeps getting pushed out every year. So,
My experience with cost estimates is that they're never right. For one reason or another, unless you get it down in writing, what will happen is, if we try and do it ourselves, we'll buy this and then something will break, and then we're going to have to go back and spend more money, and we're over budget, and then you could have, it just goes on and on and on, and it never gets done. or we're constantly battling, asking for more money when the taxpayer may have said, why don't you just pay for it once and be done with it?
You could pay for it once and be done with it, but it would take, 50% of the projects that you have planned for the schools or public works or the fire department, and they'd be all pushed out a year.
Well, I think that's what he's saying. We need to decide, where do we sit? Do we sit,
Yeah.
we either are committed to doing it or we're not?
I would still ask for some cost estimates. You gotta know if this is $1 million project or a $200,000 project or anywhere in between. And we, the committee, I would talk for all of us, we have no idea what it costs. And our town engineer, he's the next best thing to being educated on what these things do cost. And it's a
we've
very
broken
small investment in
30,000
his time.
We've
do that.
broken 30,000 out of this and put it in year one. So to some extent, we're committed to starting the project. If there's not a commitment to continue it, what are we doing that? So we're kind of riding the fence on. We're going
All
to
right.
start it, but then we're not.
Refresh me, Erica, what did we put 30,000 in?
It's line 106, Village Hill Drainage. So
Okay.
basically split it out to do a little bit each year,
Right,
right?
right.
Uh,
So that was
but
the
that-
30,000 that was
by
gonna
the-
go along with a rental of an excavator, right?
Correct. And if we continue to do that, we've then spent the dollar amount equivalent of purchasing, of leasing out this excavator in rental fees. And then we owe nothing at the end to use for anything other than just that project that it did. So I think that was some of what we had discussed before. We thought we could do this, at least get the drainage portion of this done. And then the pavement is a completely different issue. And you're not going to be using an excavator for that. That is going to
Right.
be a contractor. So,
Right, so the 30,000 would go along with a rental in year one, which
Right.
would tell
And
us, okay, and we would get $30,000 worth of work done. You're
right,
right.
but if you look across the years, Mike, you'll see it broken out to do a few, a few
Right.
each year, and each year comes with a cost. We are spending the equivalent to have purchased that excavator, but have nothing left at the end.
Well, no, that's
the
not true
equipment
because
to
we'll
us.
have work done.
We will have work done, but we
Right.
will have rented someone else's machine where we could then have spent the same amount of money, had the machine, and then continue to use it for many other things is what I think we're hearing Troy speak to. Is that it
In-
has more uses than this one project.
Yes, I stipulate that. I don't think we need to keep rehashing that. I think we agree on that. The question is, if he does the work, if he puts $30,000 into the rest of the job and he puts out, if he rents the machine for a couple of months and does the work, does he then end up spending the same thing as paying for it for a whole year, plus doing $30,000 worth of work? That's the key right there. If the rental for a couple of months costs the same as the ownership for a year, then we've come to a balance point, and I completely get the argument. I'm not arguing against the excavator. To be honest, I think it's possible if we had some numbers to work with, we'd see that the excavator purchase and maybe even one additional staff person might be a better deal than contracting these projects out. I just don't know what those numbers are.
In the 30,000 or 35 or 40 each year, how much of that is in pipes and pavement? And how much of that would be man hours? And how much of that is actually the rental? Because those other costs are still gonna be there no matter what.
The 30,000 covered whatever it was for pipe and 6 catch basins. And then the pavement, that was the stone, the process, the pavement to pave the trenches. That's what it was equaled out to be.
And
then
that
the
was all
rental?
materials?
that was materials, that was pipe, that was 6 catch basins, that was repaving the trenches, not the whole road. And then it was a rental for a month. So the rental's about $4,000 a month to rent it. So if we rent it for 2 months, that's $8,000. If we rent it for 3 months, it's $12,000.
Which is more than buying it.
More. So that was my point on it. So if we did this for 2 years or 3 years, just to say that we did it. So if we rented that machine, we've already, for 3 years, we basically almost bought that machine. Where if we had the machine, who knows, this year we might put 8 catch basins in or 10 catch basins. It all depends on what things happen, if there's storms or anything. It all depends. Who knows? We could hit ledge and the whole project could be at a halt. No one knows that. But that's just like anything else. Once you start in the ground, nobody knows what's in the ground unless you do some core boring and see what happens.
What about this? What if we cut the 30,000 to 20 and add the excavator back in and start that lease for year 1? And then the years 2 and 3, we could still have the 35 and 40 grand or so.
You mean start the excavator in year 1 and not year 2?
Right, but cut to stay where we are, cut the 30 to 20.
Yeah, I mean, you could, yeah, you could, and I can get some more places on pipes and catch basins again. I mean, we're going off state bid for all the pipe and everything, the gravel's coming local. And, we have some of it up at our own pit right now that we have. So some of that doesn't have to be purchased. We do have some material at our yard that's already been, set aside. But can I get 6 catch basins in with that 20,000? Probably not. But maybe we can take some out of my road money. We could do something different to do the 6 catch basins, or who knows, we could do 8 catch basins. It all depends on how everything goes.
So that's my idea of getting the excavator this year, cut that 30 to 20. It gets us within, I think, $500 to where we need to be, the $700. And you could have bragging rights to say it's the first committee that ever actually got something done on Village Hill, other than the bridge.
Yeah, and the bridge is getting some years on it now.
Yes, but it was a good investment.
Yes, I don't think we can rest on those laurels, though.
Yeah,
We
no.
still keep calling it new, along with that last.
Speaking of bridges, just a side note here, how much do we have? I think we talked about this a little bit last year, the bridge across the Willimantic River at Depot Road. Are we at some point going to be on the hook for that? Half of it with Tolland? That bridge is coming up on 40 something years old, I think.
Troy, do you have any bridge reports on that?
Wait, Christina was saying. Christina was saying
I think that the dividing line is at the railroad track.
Yeah, that's
No,
Tolland.
it's at the river.
No.
Not
Yeah.
ours. I was gonna say, Troy and I met
No.
with Carl and had a big bridge report, and that wasn't in there.
Yeah, that bridge is ours because when it was rebuilt the last time after the truck, it's half ours, half Tolland's. When the bridge was rebuilt the last time, when I think it was Mahaliak's truck broke it, it was called the McCoo-Deskis-DeSico Bridge because they were the 3 selectmen at the time. My dad, Bob Deskis, and Al DeSico. Unofficially, of course.
Troy, was that in our bridge report?
I do not believe it was in our bridge.
I don't either.
And those bridge reports come from the state. So
Yeah.
that's,
Would it be in Tolland's bridge reports?
Yeah, and Christina, you're saying your recollection is it's
Well,
on our bridge?
I just remember with the railroad tracks and we had to do repairs on that, we were on the hook for half and Tolland was on the hook for half. So logic would tell me that anything on the other side of
Right.
the railroad
You can't-
tracks would.
You can't have half of the railroad tracks and half of the bridge, right?
Right, right.
Near as I know, the property line's down the middle of the river.
Yes, it's the property lines on the river, not on the railroad tracks.
So
We'll look into
congratulations
that.
for getting Tolland to pay for that.
Tolland, I think Tolland was on the hook for that, if I remember right, Christina, because they provide a lot of, provide a lot of traffic across the bridge.
Yeah, maybe
Or, I mean, across the tracks,
on the tracks.
yeah. But I believe that bridge across the Willimantic River, and that's had potholes in the deck recently. Someone's repairing the potholes.
And we don't plow that.
Yeah. Well, if we
Well,
look long enough, we can probably find a whole lot more projects in town, but
We'll look into that bridge question. But for
let's
purposes
skip
of-
that one for
purposes of
now.
This plan,
So
I know
we'll
that
move-
was off topic, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So Stuart, you're saying take the 10,7 out of year 2.
Put it back in year one,
And then lower
line 106.
line 106 to 20.
And then we will hope that the weather is good and Troy has lots of manpower and start working his
And
way
we're
up
not-
that hill.
And we're not sitting here next year, or the year after, saying we just can't do it. We either need more staff or we need to bid out the drainage work anyway.
And for a CIP request for next year, we need to know the ongoing costs and especially the cost of the finished pave, assuming it needs finished paving, I would guess it would. From Pinecrest on down, what's the estimate for that?
I will
I'm
get all
guessing
that.
from the guys, they'll probably give you a price based on specifications and how many square feet and so on.
All right.
So Troy, does that work for you?
Yep, that works for me.
Okay,
So if I think Donna's still making changes. but
I'm good.
Look at that number go down, Donna.
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Wasn't it 639?
Oh, I thought it was 693.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
that should be only a $700
Jump.
difference in that.
Yeah, I thought we were lower than 693. I thought we were down.
We were somewhere down near 640.
Yeah, because we were
I thought it was about $100,000
from
more.
last year. Yeah,
Yeah,
Somebody go back to the tape.
yeah.
yeah. So you think it should be around 644? So, okay,
Were they both
so,
aligned? Is that 311 change? Is that going to the same fund, right?
local funds,
Yeah.
and it's new to 21, 22.
Okay, and then
So where did when we
there's the
reduced the-
30,000 or now 20,000,
Yep, 20,000 here.
what fund was that in?
930, and it was
930.
before.
That's the difference because that's in 930.
Yeah, but we just split up where the 10,000 was coming from instead of, it's still all local funds.
That's another one where you could lower what you're putting in the capital reserve by 10,000. Because you just spent 10,000 less out of capital reserve.
Yeah, now you're back to
How's that?
65.
Yeah, there you go. That gets us back to kind of where we started.
What are we, under 100,000 in capital reserve, right? And is that sustainable will be our next question.
So just a reminder, year two, towards the top tentatively, there's 4 items coming out of Fund 17. But it's the last year of the truck payment, so that the fund balance in 17, I'm sure is going to go down a fair bit, but the following year, we don't have that big truck payment to go with. So kind of 1 year dips in fund balances aren't too bad. What you don't want to be doing is drawing that fund balance down to 0. I had a question about the lot SIP project,
The what?
the lot SIP project in South Wellington.
Yeah.
The looked like there was some road rearranging down there and putting an island, and is that going to impact the parking lot across the street?
Yeah, so it will just need to be paved. So it's actually lowering that parking lot, the Hall School parking lot, you mean?
Yes, across the street from the
Yes.
school.
Yes, it will add an ADA accessible cross there from the parking lot, and it will actually lower that parking lot. And so in our original plan was the cost of the parking lot, but that quickly came out, not at our choice. So in year 2, Phil has $100,000 for HMS paving the parking lots. A portion of that is that lot across the
Okay.
street.
I was hoping Lot Zip was gonna pay for that paving.
No, we did too.
Okay,
We hoped, but they said no, no school. Kind of like LOSIP in that they don't do school things. And so Phil put that paving in year 2 because they would need to be completed with the project before he did the parking lot. And it would all work in the same year.
continuing down year 2 for a bit, one of the biggies is the land purchase for a new school, if that goes forward. At what point, if you've committed to the land, are you committing to a bond at that point to complete the project?
No, not unless it's gone to a referendum, really.
Right, but would you buy the land and not build a school?
Well, we did it
Well,
once with
It's
Younger.
Russell, that's how we have the Youngerman property.
Yeah,
Right.
So
Sad
it's
but
been done.
true.
You know, I think we're just starting the discussion, so land is a topic and will be a topic on the next meeting. They've asked for some information about land around the school and land that the town already owns, and some questions specifically about the Youngerman property. So no, I would say that does not commit you to a school. They are 2 different commitments.
okay, so then it gets back to, you end up paying $320-something thousand in that ballpark for the land, if you're not gonna bond it. That's as bad or worse than doing Village Hill.
Right.
You know how many years that's been kicked out?
Mhm. And we could get through this process and find that to purchase the piece of land necessary could be much more or much less than that. The 750 was the figure used in the Fryer study for land acquisition.
But even if it's a plus or minus even a couple $100,000, how do we come up with that one big chunk of cash to buy the land out of local funds and still do any other projects?
That's a solid question. You know, I think we've said without significant tax increases and significant, the plan as it sits doesn't work. So something would have to get cut.
I mean, ultimately, if the whole project went through, you would bond it and spread it out over 20 years.
Mhm.
This is requiring to do a 1-year cash purchase with whatever we have in our local fund.
Well, I don't think this is requiring, that's just the fund that happens to be sitting there. That's up to us to decide if we want to change that local fund.
Well, yeah, but which
have it
money
attached-
tree do you want to pick from?
Right now, every project on this, on year 2, right now, except for a handful, all these projects above the land are all sitting without a fund source. So they're sitting in local funds.
So Donna, with the lease for the excavator we just talked about for 10,700,
Yes.
does that allow us to move or delete or change line 99? It talks about doing a lease for an excavator for the full 66? Or,
This would get moved over to here. Right?
Mhm.
Another biggie for year two is some more money for the salt shed. My recommendation is to take that 347, run with it, and build a $347,000 salt shed.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm inclined to say that too. I think I understand the goals of the giant salt shed. But I think it's just too much.
And whether or not you can save that by relocating it behind the Mid-Nearac complex to save you a whole lot of site work, or put up with some of the operational issues of putting it in the town pit, or at least
I
it's
wouldn't suggest moving
flat
it
and
to the town
open.
pit at all.
There's obviously some drawbacks to that, but there's a whole lot of drawbacks to digging a great big cut into that hillside. At least in terms of cash.
Yeah.
And if you end up with a salt shed that got 6 months instead of a year, I'm not the public works guy, but I'm thinking that's okay. You ran out of salt once in 30 years. That's when the whole state ran out. And again, if you left the 172 in there, what else could you do that year? Let alone some of the other biggies we got in there, the school land purchase and, stuff like that. Schofield Road, I think we can push out one more year because it's going to take Troy and his new excavator 2 years to finish Village Hill at the very least.
I'd move it out farther. I think it's a bigger problem than Troy doing. It's a matter of where.
Well, in
And I
terms
think
of,
we have the perpetual question, where's the water going?
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why we have $15,000 in the prior year to do the engineering to figure that out.
Mhm.
Whether or not you got to get easements up there or whatever you got to do.
Yeah, imagine how much water. I'm no engineer, but if you ran all that water to the bottom, imagine how much water you'd have.
Yeah. Then you got to get it across Route 32 somewhere and go put it in the soccer field.
It would be coming down fast enough. You could build a ramp and shoot it right over Route 32.
Yeah.
Erica, this, I'll only throw it out. I don't think we have the knowledge to have a real discussion about it right now, but when it comes to old town roads and abandoned roads and all that stuff, if you look at the old alignment of Schofield, it actually crosses Route 32 and goes all the way down to the railroad tracks and the river. Is it even worth determining if the town still has access to those old right-of-ways, and could we continue our drainage right down there across that? Obviously we have to cross Route 32, but if we could get across Route 32, could we continue down that path that used to go down there? Is that still available as town property? And then have the large drain basin that catches the water and soaks it into the ground and all that stuff.
It's definitely something to look at. Absolutely.
So I believe there's a fine line between a legally abandoned road, which usually takes a vote of the town, and a
Right.
discontinued road.
Right.
And I think that got discontinued in probably 38 in that flood.
Beyond.
The bridge went out.
38. Yeah, that was a tough year.
Right. I feel like we're all over the place and we haven't. Can we take a look at the projects in year two, like top to bottom?
Well, I thought that's what
We're
we
doing.
But we didn't. We skipped right down. We skipped all these school projects that have no source assigned to them. Went right down to the land and then kept going.
Yep. So First one would be the center school clock system. Line 52. Um, Pretty much you got choices of 930 or 04,
Yeah,
I think.
no LoSiP.
And ultimately, they're
All
both
school.
local funds, just one's fresher off the taxpayer's wallet than the other.
What do you think about putting the deposit for the land to the reserve fund?
Okay.
Oops.
Do we have enough in the reserve fund to do it at that point?
All right, 334,000. And that was in 22, 23. No, we don't. Okay, Stuart, what do you think?
I'm thinking that it's gonna have to go with the bond with the school, because I picture the taxpayers are not gonna vote on appropriating money to the land if they're not committed to building the school.
Okay, all
Um,
right, okay. Then that's out in 24, 25.
And you may do that a year early. I know that you know more about than I do, but that kind of that bond anticipation note, which is kind of the equivalent of a contractor loan while you're building your house. Once the house is built, you get the mortgage kind of thing. That
Right,
the that's the
short-term
head
note.
start on that.
Yep.
And realistically, those years are subject to change based on the new committee, that if they're ready to go and committed and move it up a year, so be it. And if it goes out another year, that's it. That's out of our span of control in terms of that. But we just don't have the money, the cash in either reserve or local funds to pump that much money in. Even with the reimbursement, we still don't have enough money to do that in local funds, short of cutting a whole lot of stuff or putting a lot more money in reserve and not doing some projects, a lot of projects. And I believed on it. I wasn't involved with this last year. The talk, and it may have come off the sheet, was the doing one big bond for, say, Schofield Road, the school, and whatever big other biggies you got floating around that you want to get rid of. Liska Road might even come up before Schofield if that bridge falls in. Schofield's a mess with the water and they got to put down a lot of sand, but Liska Road, if that undermines anymore or whatever the problems are with it, that may move that up in priority quite a bit.
Yeah, Stuart, we did talk about the possibility of a municipal improvements bond in very general terms, exactly like you're saying.
Yeah.
Put a whole bunch of projects together.
And like you said, they're municipal improvements. It'll be there for decades. You know, albeit a lot of it's probably moving water around, but it'll be there and not wear out in 5 years.
Right. Which is good because you'll probably pay for it over a 30 or 40 year span.
Donna, bonds set for 20 years typically as a period, or do they go out further or less, or?
20 or 30.
Okay, Erica, what do you got next?
I'm just suggesting we go down that list.
Yep.
Just so you know, we're talking about just these school projects is 401,000, and none of that can be LoSiP funds. And how many of them would
That would
not need to be
Your
done?
payment on the
with-
bond for the new school.
What would not, right?
And not that I'm trying to steer this one direction or another, but if they were to go forward to try to purchase a new school, build a new school, if you recall Phil's nice colorful spreadsheet, some of these projects you would probably not do.
The majority of them. If you
Yes.
Look at his spreadsheet.
Right.
That you might not be doing,
There was
maybe the parking lot or. doing
Only
the second
one
floor.
center school park, only one center school project, did he say, would be needed with the eliminated with a new school, and that was chip sealing the parking lot. And it's mostly the parking lot work. Light pole replace, no.
I think in round figures, there's 600,000 or 700,000 total in the schools that wouldn't have to be done if they got a new school.
Oh, more than
It was a big number.
more than that. If you look at his list,
I figure we already went through year one, so that's gonna
right?
cut down.
I mean, in year two, before we put anything in there, you had $1 million worth of project. 750 of that was the land. 326 would be the total if we didn't have new school. Well, so, oh, sorry, he doesn't have it broken out without. Forget what I said. Scratch all that. He's just taking out the 3 new school items, not the items that would be eliminated if a new school was built.
That's right. You gotta kind of do some backwards math on that.
Yeah, I thought he had done that math on the bottom.
Yep.
He did not. He just took out the big 3 things.
So, just the west wing ventilation at a hall for 500,000 coming up, and what was his year 4?
The paving, I think in year 2 needs to stay in there, the HMS paving lot. So we should find a fund source for that. At least half of it, the part across the street. And if you're going to do some, you should do them both for cost efficiency.
Yeah, that may be a good way to split it up, because I think the one across the street's in the worst shape.
It isn't, but that's one that's going to have to be redone after they lower that parking lot.
That's right. So maybe in 1 year you do one across the street, unless there's some good savings in doing them both at once from a contractor, but if you did, based on square footage, $35,000 for across the street and the rest of it for down back the next year. And silly question, how long does it take to build a school? 2 years?
It depended on what option you went with, but they, 2 or 3 years. Some of them were shorter timeframes, and those were estimates. If you were renovating, if you were building new, if you needed swing space, if you had to move out of a building before you could finish the renovation work.
The Hall School sidewalk replacement, is that our commitment to that lot SIP project as well?
No,
Are they digging up any of our sidewalks?
no, these are the, some in the, I'll have to go by his picture, some in the front of the school, the back, along the side, and that asphalt sidewalk that goes from the side around the top of the back of the building.
Okay, so they're really not the ones in the front that may be
All the
affected by
stuff wrapping
construction?
around the building where they have the low spots and the broken up asphalt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one in the back's pretty bad, I know that.
It is, yeah. It's also the one on the back is also their ADA access to the back of the building too, and it has spots and it has skips in the levels of the sidewalks.
Excuse me. And I don't know what his estimates look like to even attempt to split that into 2.
Yeah, you probably can't.
Right,
Um,
so,
It's not in the grand scheme of things, not a huge project. It's only 41,000.
the sidewalks, but even the paving projects, I don't know what the cost would be to cut that into, and if it would be beneficial.
Yeah, I suspect it would save some dollars per square foot, but the advantage of splitting it over 2 years may outweigh a slight decrease in cost per square foot.
Mhm.
I think the sidewalk might be a little different because there's so much labor in forming and all that, so much mobilization of the forming crew and all that.
Yes, yeah, there's the sidewalk one you wouldn't want to split up.
Yeah, I don't think it would pay off there.
And
a
some of
small
it's asphalt, right? The one that's across the top back is asphalt, it's not concrete.
Yeah,
I think he wants to replace it with concrete though.
yeah, that's gonna get all dug out. It isn't like you could just pave over that. Unless you can attribute any of these projects to low SIP or steep.
No LOSIP.
Well, I'm talking year 2 in general.
But-
Everything else comes from local funds or reserve, which were ultimately local funds as well.
So there's 15,000 for open space preservation and 65,000 for a walking track at River Road.
So the 4 that are on the screen right now for the school, we still haven't assigned a fund to them, right?
Either got to be 930 or 04.
So,
If we keep them in year 2.
so could we put a fund to them right now, or at least look at what the total is? I mean, we have to put a fund to them so that it'll add to the total local cost, right?
Right.
Let's see where we are on total local cost. I'm sure it'll be startling.
1,028,000.
And we haven't even,
Started at 1.9 million, so we have made progress. Look at us go.
look at us go.
I'll be right back. You guys keep chatting.
I do think that we need to spend more on our capital, but I'm not sure $1 million in 1 year is.
I don't think so. I don't know how much support that would get.
Right.
The town should have played the Mega Millions.
Well, and won.
There's always that.
There's always
You
that.
can't win if you don't play.
Well, I can tell you this much, you can lose if you don't play.
That is true.
Proved
And I'm proof that you can win and play. I mean, lose and play.
Right. Donna's working her magic. I'm not sure exactly what she's doing there, but
She's
she's,
assigning funds and then truing up all of the
yep.
fund sources. This is why I only put the projects in and she does the rest.
Yeah. So Donna, when you added those other 3 school projects in here, the 3 you put on 930 there.
Yes.
So that didn't change. How much did that change the yellow number? Did it change all of them? I mean, did all those go to local?
3 went to local, and
Yeah.
the paving for 100,000 I put over to the reserve fund.
Okay. All right. That's what you did. Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
That's a bad sign when you gotta make that column wider.
Yes, it is.
Oh, 868 is still a big number. Wow.
Yep.
The 35,000 for Village Hill for year 2, could that go to LoCIP?
I think that it could. It looks okay. Yep. Good.
Okay.
Good call, Stuart.
You try to push what you can over to that one as long as that fund exists.
So does that come out of the left column now, or how does that?
Yes. Yes, it does. It comes out of the left column.
I should say AD, I guess, because there are a lot of left columns.
I knew what you meant, though. Okay.
833, we're getting more reasonable.
We moved the walking track lighting. Is that something that? What the lights were. there an appetite for that in year 2?
This is the walking track lighting. I mean, I think it's a great idea, but I don't know. I mean, that's a huge chunk of money when I like the idea, but
I love the idea. Maybe we haven't seen the effect of the lights that are on longer around all of the equipment that's there. So maybe if we push it out one more year, we'll be able to see what additional issues and or concerns that brings.
right.
The other side of it is it could bring more people to the park that are going to walk in the dark, regardless of the light. So I don't know.
Do you know if they've installed the security cameras yet? Because that was part of that previous project, was supposed to be for lighting and security cameras.
The security cameras went up with the parking lot lighting.
Yes. So the cameras did get installed with
Yes,
that?
they're installed. Yeah, they went with the parking lot lighting
Yep.
last time. Yep.
Right. Okay, good.
Yeah, that was summer before last, I believe.
Right. What did you just move there, Donna?
So I just moved the 44,000 for the clock
Yeah.
at the schools to reserve. It seems like and I did that because it seems like it's more of a capital project than it is a capital expenditure,
Okay.
just because of the amount, 44,000.
Mm-hmm.
Did we do the same for the center school clocks or no?
Okay, so let's see, center school clocks.
Right there, that 35,000 on
52, line 52.
Okay.
I won't put her on the spot to speak, but our new Parks and Rec director is following us here this evening. So while I may have suggested moving that out a year, I totally support it. I'm not sure what else we could possibly sustain. Is that the LOSIP line, Donna, or is that reserve?
That is the capital reserve. So that will have about $70,000 in it at the
Ooh.
end of
That's not good.
23.
That's not sustainable. We started this year with 466,000.
Well, I feel like we have a pretty good year too. I mean, a pretty reasonable effort, especially since we're going to spend next season revisiting. It'll now be the year 1. You know, next season, a year from now, we'll be calling it the year 1 and going through it all again.
Right, but if there's no money there at the end of that, we haven't even looked at years 3, 4, and 5. So we don't start putting something into capital reserve, there won't be anything to do any projects after a year or 2.
Yep. So what do we, what does year 2 show as money going into capital reserve?
169,000.
Okay, so that's coming from taxation essentially.
Yes.
And what have we typically been putting in? Has there been sort of a trend on that?
There really hasn't been a trend. We balance it out because it's local tax dollars. So whatever we're not spending on local, then we're saving.
Right. Stuart, how many years worth of this plan do we feel like we need to get through tonight? We only have 2 more meetings, right, to do years 3, 4, and 5?
If we need more meetings, then we'll have to do more meetings.
Yeah.
But we
I'm
only have
just
2
saying
more
on the
planned.
current schedule.
We only have 2 more planned.
I think we'd make it with those 2 that are planned. And I think it'd be helpful if we can get this spreadsheet emailed out to us a day or 2 before the meeting. I know, even though I played with it for years, I kind of know my way around, but for the new folks, this is a lot to absorb, so if they could get it ahead of time, where give them some time to study it. And as usual, it's going to be the big items that, kill you, so to speak.
Stuart,
Yep.
what are your thoughts about Donna sending us the sheet? It seems like she's trued up her numbers in this temporary state. What would you think about her sending us this sheet? Us calling it a night. We're 2 hours in tonight.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
And
Donna, do you want till the morning to double check? I know you are.
I'm going to send it out. I'm going to keep working while you're working, and we'll
Okay.
just call it a work in
Okay.
progress.
Yep,
Sure.
that works.
And then we need to try to be prepared in the next 2 meetings to get years 3, 4, and 5. Is that doable? Or is that too optimistic?
I mean, times I've been around, year 5 never gets balanced. That's the dumping
Right.
ground for everything else.
Right.
So I don't think we'll lose our mind if we don't get year 5 done. But 3 and 4, we should, take a stab at.
Sure.
And then be prepared to move on year 1, because that needs
Yes.
to be,
Yep.
that is a part of the selectmen's budget.
Sure.
So I need to see those numbers to see where our budget stands.
So for those of you that are reviewing this, not only do you have this spreadsheet, but the other one is the first worksheet, table 2 sources. That's another one to look at. And what you're looking there is the balances on some of those funds, be it 17 or LoCIP, that sort of thing, that, or even reserve, that they can have some swings up and down, but you can't draw them down to 0. You lose all your cushion at that point. I know, Fund 17, if something big happens and we got enough in there, that sometimes gets hit for doing some of those things on the emergency services side. The LoCIP, you don't want too much money building up, because the state actually holds on to the money, I believe, until you're ready to actually spend it. And if they see you're not using it, they figure, well, maybe you don't need it so bad. But again, you don't want to bring that down to 0 either, although there are limited projects that fall under the rules for LoCIP. So those are the 2 big things. So I think we made progress. Year 1 is as good as we can get it right now. And Mike, Erica, and company, can you figure out the conservation request in terms of how that needs to be accounted for, that you're all comfortable with it, and what the procedure would be to move forward with that, in terms of, the appraisal, the surveying coming out of this year fiscal, I'm guessing how much money might be left. It's probably too early to tell. And then what commitment does the state need to CES, does it just have to be in the plan? Or not? And ultimately, what's the end cost of this? And if we don't get the grant, do you still want to do the project?
I would encourage someone from the conservation to come back and hopefully answer some of those questions as well.
Yep, they may have some or not. I'll send an email. But also in terms of your financial side of things and how you account for stuff. I know there's rules you guys have to follow for what you can and can't do. And it's not something we do very often, so I'm not sure. Anybody has a lot of experience in doing the open space purchasing.
Yeah, Erica, I think you're right. They did a very good job of explaining it, and they even committed that
Right.
they wouldn't move certain steps
But
unless,
I think that's the big question is so one of my big questions is, when will they know if this grant just isn't going to happen? And if it's
Right.
not, do we just move this out of our plan? That's probably the biggest question for us. They did, right? They were pretty honest in both times at Board of
Yes.
Finance and then here. If they didn't get the grant, they weren't going to move further with the process.
correct.
But if they find out just, before or after this goes to referendum and we hold on till then, is there kind of a drop dead? I thought they said it typically is in January. But the state of where things are with the state, I'm not sure what the appetite is for that. So,
And you also have the seller to consider how fast they looking to get rid of that land. And are they willing to wait if this process drags on?
right.
So, Okay, I think we
There's
made some
nothing to be
progress
done
tonight.
till the End of July, with committed funds anyway, so.
Yes, and
At
and
earliest.
again, with the somewhat changing rules for town meetings or whatever passes for a town meeting nowadays.
Right.
You may have those challenges as well. So study your spreadsheets. And it's those big ones that just kill us, in terms of we don't have the money, and to come up, oh, it's only 300,000, for this or 150 for that. I mean, the 20s and 30, $40,000 projects look easy by comparison. But you try to take each year and make the town a little better, and that's what we're doing.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Motion adjourned. Mike seconded. All in favor of adjourning?
aye.
Say aye. Opposed? Nobody says that. See you next week.
Good night.
Stuart.